I think a lot of us have a hunch what the Warriors may be planning to do this offseason, at least three of the moves that would potentially affect their offseason. Would that be okay? We got Evan Giddings on today's show to break down if what we're thinking is good enough for the Warriors or not.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast.
What are they going to say now?
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yo, everyone, what's the good word? Welcome to the Locked On Warriors. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Best ways you can check out this show, just search us wherever you, whatever's your favorite search engine, Locked On Warriors. You can find us on YouTube. You can find us wherever you get your audio podcasts, and you can find me on all forms of social media. My name's Charlie Walter, formerly at 95.7 The Game in the Bay Area. Also covered the team for CBS in San Francisco. Evan Giddings, my co-host today, he worked at 95.7 The Game with me. He's still there doing Warriors Post. You can hear him on the call in Moraga for the St. Mary's Gales men's basketball team on the radio. And today we team up together, usually Tuesdays, today on a Wednesday, team up together to break down everything that's going on in Warriors land. And there's a whole bunch to get to on today's show. We're basically dissecting three moves that we believe the Golden State Warriors will complete once the offseason's done. That is Jonathan Kuminga returns. Now, how he returns, what the contract looks like, qualifying offer, we'll see when it comes to that. But I believe he's going to return. Evan believes he's going to return. Al Horford, I think that there's some form of a handshake right now. I do believe that he will be a Golden State Warrior, as will De'Anthony Melton. And the question, is that good enough for the offseason? That's what we're getting into on today's show. Ev, how we doing, man?
Good. Yeah, I know it's a day later than usual, but I'm glad I didn't miss anything. It just feels like that's kind of the holding pattern we've been, I don't know, gosh, now we're on day 9, Chuck. Still waiting for something to happen. I feel like I should start screaming Wilson or something.
Wilson! Great movie, by the way. Just got to get the volleyball, throw some red marker on there, and we're good to go.
Exactly.
But yeah, radio silence. Still, let's dissect this, man. Jonathan Kuminga, Al Horford, De'Anthony Melton. I guess which of those three would you think would be most likely? Which of those three players most likely to not either return or be a Warrior?
That's a good question. I think at this point for me, it is Kaminga. And I don't think, shout out Tom Hanks, we're going to have a castaway situation. I think he's going to be back. And I think it's because both sides don't really have a choice. The Warriors need his contract and perhaps need his services, and he has no leverage. So no other team wants to offer him a deal that he wants. And I think the question now for the Warriors is, once this domino begins to fall in restricted free agency, because JK is not the only one, right? It's Quentin Grimes, it's Josh Giddey, it's Cam Thomas. I think once one of them gets decided, all four will happen shortly, and we don't know when that's going to be. And then the result of that is how much of the pie is left for someone like Al Horford and De'Anthony Melton. So I think Kaminga is the domino that has to fall first. And that's why I would say he's the most likely of the three, even though we've spent a lot of time this summer talking about how that could potentially be problematic.
Haven't even brought up Gary Payton II in restricted free agency. Last thing we heard is that Warriors are probably going to move on from GP2, but that's a name to monitor as well that could be returning for Golden State. So, all right, let's say it's Kaminga returning. And based on all the words Steve Kerr's had this offseason in the few interviews he's had on 95.7, on TK show, whatever, the move would be to clear the runway next season in a starting lineup, or at least in a lineup that's prominently featured, that has Jimmy, JK, Steph, Draymond, name the other player in there, but those four playing together to see how it looks throughout the regular season, getting them ready for the playoffs. Now, in the back of your mind, you're thinking, okay, well, when December comes, he's a likely trade candidate. Obviously, if you can lock him up to a short-term extension right now, 2 years, 45, whatever, it makes it makes it better for you down the road in returning obviously a player that's worth more money. If that was the route they wanted to take. But let's say it's JK returning. Let's say it's Al Horford coming in, who is, by all accounts, just a Steve Kerr player. It's shocking that he's never played for the Dubs because he does everything that Kerr wants a big man to do, including defend at a high level despite being 39 years of age. And then De'Anthony Melton, we already saw how much he fit in the Bay Area last year into this culture. He was awesome in the few games that he played. Those three join the fold. You lose GP2 and Looney. You think about how good they were at 23-8 last year once Jimmy arrived. You have Moody getting a year older. You have Pods getting a year older. At the same time, you have three aging stars getting a year older. Is that good enough for you? JK, Al, and Melton.
I don't think it's good enough for me to believe that they're a top 4 team, but I do believe it's the best that they can do given the hand that they've, number one, been dealt, and number two, it feels like they've kind of dealt themselves by not rectifying the Kaminga debacle up until this point. So I think if you're telling me at the end of the summer, based on free agency, lack of suitors, lack of veteran men players that are willing to play for Golden State, that they end up with Jonathan Kuminga on likely a compromise contract, Al Horford on a 1-year mid-level deal, and De'Anthony Melton perhaps even on a minimum, but close to a minimum considering his injury, I think that might suffice. I honestly think that's the best case scenario they're looking at right now. And that's pretty much what you're going to be looking at. Because if you have those 3 players on your roster, that gives you 12 plus the 2 rookies. 14 is generally where the Warriors have been. All stars and signs sort of, for me, Chuck, align with this threesome ending up as Warriors and them trying to make the best of it, which is kind of what they did last year, only now they're a little bit older, maybe more injury prone, and Celebrini is going to have maybe the most difficult job in the NBA in 2025-26.
A lot of icy hot in that training room, to say the least.
Yeah.
Okay, let's say Bradley Beal. This interest is real, and it's not just one of many reports that we see in an offseason that's X, Y, and Z is interested. They've made contact. You can't keep up with it. So much of this doesn't even come to fruition to where there's even real talks. It's just reports and rumors and whatever. But the report is that Bradley Beal would potentially have some interest in the Warriors were the Suns to buy him out. That's obviously the first domino that has to fall. And then the other thing would be that the Warriors would have some interest in Bradley Beal. Let's say those two things are true. There's a partnership there. Would that take this offseason over the top where it's JK, it's Horford, it's Melton, and then you have Bradley Beal as well?
I mean, I think assuming health, I actually think Melton is a better fit for the Warriors than Beal. But if Bradley Beal wants to sign with Golden State, I think signs kind of point him towards Los Angeles and the Clippers. But if he joined Golden State, I think he'd be a great gunner off the bench, and he would kind of give them, a sort of a different version of Buddy Hield in a sense that I don't think he would start. I think he'd be able to average between 16 and 18 points off the bench.
You don't think he'd be the starting 2 guard?
I don't think he'd start for Steve Kerr. I don't.
Who would? Pods?
Yep. Yeah. I know that might sound crazy, but I think that's how much in love the Warriors and Steve Kerr is with Brandon Podziemski. And Bradley Beal, to be fair, at this stage in his career, is not a very good defender. He's not really interested in passing. I don't think he's ever played in a system like the Warriors before. So for me, it would make the most sense and highlight his skill set to bring him off the bench. But it sounds like you would have a different idea.
Yeah, I mean, you would have to think so. He's putting up 18 last year on pretty efficient shooting, and the defense can be hidden a little bit, especially if you have Horford, by the fact that you have a really good defensive center. You got Draymond at the 4, and you have Jimmy Butler at the 3. That can hide a little bit of the defensive inabilities that he has been plagued with throughout his career. Let's talk about the future of the Dubs. Tons of draft picks coming up for Golden State. Could they bundle those together to get better in the near future? Will they have a full reset? Will this team go star hunting in a couple of seasons? There's not a ton happening in the present, so Evan and I take a gander to the future That's coming up on Locked On Dubs. Let's tell you about today's sponsor. It is Monarch Money. You ever wonder where your money went? That's where Monarch Money comes into play. If you ever wished managing your money felt easier, that's where Monarch Money makes it a little easier. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. One surprising thing I've noticed since using Monarch Money is how much I spend on food delivery, on TV subscriptions that I don't even use and haven't used in the last 4 years. And Monarch Money makes it a little bit easier to look at my spending and budget appropriately and find out what adds up and what can be taken off the slate. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNBA for half off your first year. All right, man. So the exact draft picks that the Warriors have coming up, it's 26 first round, it's a 27 first round, it's a 28 first round, it's a 29, I believe it is, first round, and then it's a 2030 second round. Although with the Warriors potentially looking for a young player and a first round pick for the Kaminga trade, maybe it's that 2030 that they get their own pick back and they have first and second. And then they also have a first round pick in 2031. So take away 1 year, and over the next 6, they have 5 first round draft picks. If the team sputters at any point, those picks can be extremely valuable. It's as simple as a ping pong ball, potentially giving you the next face of the NBA. We don't know who that face is in 2030. There's a lot of time for players to develop and for players from overseas to come on our radar, but it's never a bad thing to have first-round draft picks, especially when players like Steph Curry, Jimmy Butler, and Draymond Green are heading off payroll. At the same time, you heard Jokic say that he doesn't want to sign an extension right now for the Denver Nuggets. He's going to be available come 28. I think Giannis is available come 28. There's tons of great players in that class and beyond in free agency that the Warriors can go after. How do you think they're going to approach this when they get to that fork in the road? Are they going to go with the complete rebuild? We have all our picks. We're going to suck for a year. We're going to go young. Or are they going to go the route of trying to bridge the gap through free agency, through trades, using those picks as assets? It's a fascinating position that they're in because they do not have even close to a cornerstone once Steph Curry's gone. Like Pods, Moody, Kaminga, they don't have a cornerstone. But what they do have is tons of assets to cobble them together and get one, which is something that the Chicago Bulls and Nets and all these other teams just don't really have.
Yeah, I think that their entire future is in those picks you just talked about. With all due respect to Kaminga, Pods, and Moody, their future is not on this team if you're talking about faces or cornerstones or anything of that such. But I think that similar to last year, the Warriors are in a position where I think the picks that are on the table to trade don't go past 2027. And that's obviously when Curry, Jimmy, and Draymond come off the books. I think they'd be willing to move this year's first round pick, potentially even next year's first round pick if it really improved their roster. But anything beyond that would have to catapult them into clear contention. And unless you're talking about a Giannis, I just don't know if there's a player out there that they would be able to get. I mean, Jokic is obviously not attainable. Doncic is a free agent next year. So is Trae Young, but those guys probably aren't going anywhere and certainly wouldn't be going to the Warriors. I think the question they have to ask themselves is how much of a player do they think that they can be, let's say 2 or 3 years from now when guys are coming off the books in free agency, because they haven't had a chance to sign a max salary slot, I believe, since 2016 when they acquired Kevin Durant. And that was only because the league cap jumped, 10 or 15%, which it may not over the next couple of years. So do they think that they're a locale? And I'll ask you this, Chuck. Do you think that Golden State could potentially be a destination that could acquire a max salary player come 2028? Like, what about their resume in the last decade would tell you that that's a possibility?
Culture,
Yeah.
ownership, proven success. Maybe if Steph Curry, if he is retired at that point, if he gets into ownership, that could be something that entices them. Bay Area, attractive place to live for some, good weather. There's a lot that goes into it, right? But we don't really know because one, Warriors, aside from Durant and Livingston's one of the better free agents they brought in the last 30 years, and Iguodala, which obviously there was some other things that went into courting Iggy as compared to other free agents. But like when you go back to it, this has always been a franchise that has kind of done their damage through drafting for the most part. And sometimes they've done their damage through drafting good players and then trading them out the door, right? That's happened many times. So within the last 30 years, there's never really been a chance to where you have 150 off the books. You have opportunities to go out and sign 1, 2, 3 of the bigger names in free agency at one time and really bring in LeBron, Bosh, Wade type. I know Wade was already with the Heat, but that sort of ordeal where you can form together guys through free agency, through trades, whatever. I would think that the ownership group and the culture that the Warriors have built and just the fact that for the most part, players have come in and have liked it here, right? And especially if the Jimmy Butler experiment goes well for 2 years and he rides off into the sunset, a Warriors legend with a championship, that doesn't hurt the cause either. But I give it back to you. Like, what do you think? Because in terms of getting those mid-level guys lately, the Warriors haven't really had the opportunity to, the good ones. But since pre-Steph Curry days, aside from Durant, they really haven't had the opportunity with the space to add one of these players. So I truly don't know. I think it's going to be fascinating.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that they've done a pretty good job of stringing together enough. I don't want to call them like reclamation projects, but sort of like success stories of players that have turned themselves into the best version of themselves. I mean, as recently as last year, you could point to Buddy Hield as a guy who hadn't played much winning basketball before last year and helped you win a playoff series. Jimmy Butler's probably more of an extreme example, but I think
we're talking trades though at that point, so free agent wise.
Well, free agents, you named one, Livingston. They're vet mins, but Otto Porter Jr., I think, is a success story. Gary Payton II is a success story. And those aren't big name players, but the biggest difference I think that Golden State has now compared to pre-dynasty and even mid-dynasty is Chase Center. Chase Center. They were always in Oakland. And I do think that your point about ownership means a lot. And the building that they currently own, and the amount of money that is associated with, like you said, the brand, the Warriors, that I think that talks. And so I think that to me is enough to maybe shift how I view the Warriors as a free agent destination, because they hadn't been one primarily before. David Lee's probably the biggest free agent that they've courted in recent memory for like an all-star pre-KD. And that's not really good enough moving forward. So I think Chase Center could be the reason why I believe that some max salary player would be willing to come to San Francisco in a top 5 market.
All right. So I have a team that I want to compare, a dynasty that obviously has been down in the dumps for a long time. Big market. You know who I'm talking about. We're going to kind of compare and contrast coming up on Locked On Warriors. I teased it, a team that had the brand awareness. Their logo meant a lot in the 90s. They had the house that Jordan built in the United Center. It's the Chicago Bulls that have really done nothing since. They have not been an attractive place for free agent signings, literally since the day Jordan walked out of there. I mean, name on one hand the amount of like all-star caliber players that are like, I want to go to Chicago and play. That's a big market. That's one of the best places in the world to live per many. Like, Warriors seem to be in a better spot than them just off ownership alone. I mean, based off everything that Kolsky has told me for a long time, and Reinsdorf in general, we know about what he's done to that franchise for the most part. Like, you would have to just think of ownership alone that the Dubs are in a much better spot. But that's what kind of scares you, right? They had the brand and everything. They lose all their stars. Granted, it's a different story with 6 of them, and with the Warriors, if they don't win anytime soon, theirs would have been 5 years prior at that point, and in 2022, the last championship. So it's different in that regard. But when we point to it, that is a franchise that has not really been able to recover, despite having opportunities to really utilize on that brand awareness that they had in the early 2000s. And it just slowly crept away to the point where I think kids nowadays don't really understand that the Bulls used to be sick.
Yeah, I mean, it's that's the future that the Warriors are trying to avoid, right? Like, the post-Jordan Bulls have been pretty much nothing before him and nothing after him. And the Warriors also, outside of 1975, have not really had much to write home about. And it's just interesting. Let's say.
You're good. I hear it going on in the background. Is that in the city, or we across the bridge? Where's that going down?
Oh no, I live in the heart of the Mission District, man. There's someone making a run for it. It looks like.
Oh man, get out there and give us the investigative reporting. You got a wireless mic that can go out there and give us the details?
Yeah, I don't know if I can give you the play-by-play, but there was a man shirtless running down the middle of the street. I don't know if he had a burrito or just trying to find some shelter. But regardless, the point you make about the Bulls, I think, is interesting with the Warriors, because like, Curry is very Jordan-esque, and I think that his shadow is going to cast a pretty long over this organization. And really, the only way to get yourself out of it, I think, is to draft well and hope that maybe one free agent chooses you. But I can't imagine it's going to be immediate. Like, when Curry retires, Chuck, like, do you think that someone would want to follow him closely? Because I think that's a lot of pressure to ask. No matter if you're a top talent in the league or a budding superstar, following Steph is not going to be an easy task.
No, but you have tons of money to throw around. I'm talking biggest contract in the history of the NBA to throw around, to where money does talk in that regard. But don't you dare sign the wrong player in that position.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, I think that just in general, like, the championship expectations, I also think that they have a chance to wane depending on how successful or not the Warriors are towards the end of Steph's career. Like, you make the second round last year, you hope to make the playoffs this year, but anything beneath winning a 5th title, I do think, is going to it's going to have us feeling like 2022 was maybe the greatest championship we've ever seen, because it was the tail end of a dynasty that capped, a historic run for Curry and co. Now it's like, how do you follow that up? They're just trying to ride this thing off into the sunset as best they can. And then what follows that, I do wonder if you'll be held to Curry's standard, but the expectation of winning, considering the way that the last couple of years have gone, I don't know if that's necessarily going to be there.
A lot can change in 2 years. Are you under the expectation that Curry, Jimmy, and Draymond ride this thing out over the next 2 years? Or could you see the TNT take into this at some point and really showing that the Warriors are willing to go a different route, which it has not looked that way for the longest amounts of time?
I think that if injuries derail this season, and not even like catastrophic ones, although that's possible for players of those age, but just like continuous nagging injuries and inability for those 3 players, and potentially like an Al Horford to stay on the court, I do think we could see the Warriors blow this up next summer, because there's no reason in trying to run back an already older, aging group of players. It's like, you don't want to be putting together a senior home right on the mid-court line of Chase Center. That's not going to be fun for anybody. I don't care about the names on the back of the jerseys. Anybody but Steph Curry, to me, is fair game at that point, Chuck. So I hope that's not the case. But I think the Warriors are absolutely prepared to try and slowly tear this thing apart and reset for a rebuild as soon as next summer. But that's not an expectation I have. I just feel like if need be, they really could get it done in 365 days.
it does feel like it's a position that they're in where it's kind of, hey, we're taking it truly one day at a time.
Yeah.
And we've seen it this free agency. They're not making any rash decisions. They've talked about it that front office, coaches, they believe that they had a team that could have gotten it done if Steph didn't get hurt. They believe they had kind of the camaraderie in the locker room that they're now bringing back, plus probably a few parts. And if Melton's one of those parts, we know he fit into the locker room and everything. So it does feel like, hey, let's take a final stab at it. Let's see how it goes. And then next summer, if need be, we can pivot. The issue that I would have is that at that point, Jimmy and Draymond, a year older, Jimmy's making more money than just about anyone in the NBA. How productive will he be? How big of a trade asset would he be if they got to that point? That's what scares me the most, is that the Warriors get to a position where that's doomsday to me, is where these guys just don't have the value of their contracts, especially with the new CBA. No one wants to take them on. It's like, all right, well, we weren't good enough last year, and we don't really have the flexibility to get better. So we're just going to kind of ride this thing out in the sunset and have a victory lap, even though we're not going to be competing for championships.
Yeah. And you mentioned something about Butler that I think is going to be under a lot of scrutiny this season if the team doesn't do well and if he doesn't play a lot, which is how much money he's making. Like, Steph Curry is the highest paid player in basketball going into next season. While he might not be the best player in basketball, he's certainly still top 5, top 10, wherever you have him. He's really good. Jimmy Butler, meanwhile, is the 5th highest paid player in the NBA entering 25-26. That's money that, if you look at the end of next season and he's played 55 games, which is what he's averaged the last 6 years, and looks a little brittle heading into the playoffs, which the last 2 postseasons have ended with him either being hurt or getting hurt, that's going to look like a really bad contract. And I know the Warriors did what they had to do, but I think this was a reality that they were prepared for and are possibly okay with trying to move next summer. Again, this is all sort of worst case scenario, but when you're a top 5 paid player, you got to have top 5 production. Jimmy Butler right now is clear cut the number 2 on the team. And I don't think he's a top 10 player in this league anymore.
That is why, and I agree with you there, but he's nice, man. He changes everything, smart player. Still think he's right around most of the all-stars in the NBA, even if the numbers don't necessarily say it. I just think he makes his teammates so much better and really fits into what the Warriors are trying to do and being unselfish and swinging it and making the right play. And he's an underrated defender too. Maybe not the defender that he once was. He's definitely lost some burst, but he's smart. He knows where to be. Got active hands. So I still like Jimmy Butler. Is one of the better players in this league, but top 5 money, no, he's definitely not that. And we knew that when the trade was made that the Warriors struck gold with the trade alone. They got rid of a first-round draft pick that ended up being, midway through the first round. Miami gets that. They got rid of pieces like Kyle Anderson that wasn't getting run anyways. Lindy Waters, didn't need him. Clears the way for more Moody. Dennis Schroeder clearly wasn't working out, and that's really it to bring in Jimmy Butler. But it was that extension that was the sticking point, and it's why Miami was willing to say see ya, right? Because they didn't want to extend him. And that's going to be kind of a depending on how the next 5, 10, 3, 4, however many years Mike Dunleavy's doing this thing, that's going to be kind of a legacy move right there, because instead of taking out some TNT or just letting, the show dwindle last year with a team that was middling, you extend it another couple of years and throw in upwards of $60 million into Jimmy Butler. And if it doesn't work out, like you said, injuries, lack of productivity, just a sharp decline, because 37-year-olds in the past have declined very quickly. It's changed a little bit, but there's always the possibility of that. It's going to look like a horrid extension. Not a bad trade necessarily, but the extension part of it that went along with the trade is not going to look good. So it's my final take on that, man. Anything else you want to add to the program today?
Well, I think it's fun that we finally get to really, and you said it day to day, I think Dunleavy said it year to year, really get to lock in on this specific group. And it might be the last best chance the Warriors have. this year might prove that last season was the last best chance they had, which sucks because Steph obviously got hurt. But I do think that we can finally put like the future talk and these second timelines to the side. And that to me is really refreshing, considering a lot of fans have spent time just like reeling over what the future is going to be. And I don't think that I really care at this point beyond 2027 what the future is for the Warriors. So we can worry about that when we get there. Does it mean trading picks? I don't necessarily think so. But, Kaminga, Horford, Melton, the place where we started this podcast, to me, looks to make this team pretty competitive. And then from there, the trainer's table is going to be the most important thing about this squad.
Sneak out one more, man. Shock the world.
Yeah.
And what a championship it would be the following year if the Warriors sputtered. They weren't good. They were injured, just never really clicked. We're a play-in team, lost in the play-in, and then you're like, all right, I guess we're breaking this thing up, right? No, they go into the following year and then do the unthinkable and pull a 2022, because that's what it felt like in 2022, man. Like they had no business winning that championship if not everything broke their way. And literally everything broke their way, from Otto Porter staying healthy to Gary Payton II being like a massive pickup to Jordan Poole having the best season of his career, I thought, still compared to his Washington seasons. Like, he was awesome in 2022. So that's what I got for you, man. Evan Giddings on today's show. Check him out on 95.7 The Game. This is Locked On Warriors. We will talk to you soon. Peace, everyone.